Welcome to Canadian Football League Weekly, presented by the World of Football. Each week, we recap the games played up north in the CFL, and we also look ahead to next week's games. Our mission is to educate American football fans on the teams and players in the CFL in the hopes that they will come to love the league as much as we do. I'm Randy Snow, and I'm joined by my son, Adam.
Hello, yes, you might have noticed the beard is gone. Gone all weekend, and eventually it just all fell out. So, time to start fresh.
Well, you were at some bluegrass music festival all weekend long.
Oh yeah, yeah. Normally we got silly facial hair, so I kept this long, and this was still pretty long. I just shaved the sides. I got home. I was just gonna make a nice goatee, but I figured I looked too much like my boss at work, so I was like, let's just even it out. That way nobody gets confused. So just gonna deal with some stubble for a little bit, but that beard should come back in no time. Maybe not as scraggly. Yeah.
Well, that mess of a beard you had needed to go one way or the other, so we'll see what comes in now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just get right into it. We're going to start with the Week 14 scores. On Friday, it was the BC Lions over the Montreal Alouettes, 37-23. The Lions opened the scoring in the first quarter when fullback David Mackey took the snap from center and ran left all the way to the end zone for a 7-0 lead. Late in the first half, BC quarterback Nathan Rourke connected with wide receiver Aiden Eberhardt for a touchdown, but Montreal quarterback Cody Fajardo found wide receiver Cole Speaker in the end zone for a touchdown, making the score 17-13 in favor of BC at halftime. In the third quarter, BC extended their lead with a 38-yard touchdown run by William Stanback to make the score 27-16. Montreal responded in the fourth quarter with a touchdown run by backup quarterback Dominic Davis, and the score was 27-23 Lions. On a 3rd and inches play, quarterback Nathan Rourke was able to slide off to his left and ran all the way for a touchdown, giving the Lions a commanding 34-23 lead late in the game. BC added a field goal with under a minute to play as they handed Montreal their second loss of the season. BC quarterback Nathan Rourke completed 22 of 28 passes for 304 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. He also ran for 27 yards and had a rushing touchdown. Running back William Stanback ran the ball 20 times for 128 yards and a touchdown, while wide receiver Alexander Hollins had 6 catches for 78 yards. Kicker Sean White was 3 for 3 on field goals, and on defense, linebacker Ryder Varga had 9 tackles. For Montreal, quarterback Cody Fajardo completed 27 of 37 passes for 240 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for 34 yards. Running back Walter Fletcher ran the ball 6 times for 21 yards and also had 8 catches for 72 yards. Wide receiver Cole Speaker had 6 catches for 46 yards and a touchdown. Kicker Jose Maltos was 3 for 3 on field goals. And on defense, linebacker Darnell Sankey had 11 tackles. This was the first meeting of the season between these two teams. I found that a little strange. I mean, we're in week 14 and they haven't met yet, so that was a little strange to me.
Yeah, a little bit surprising there. Like, honestly, since I was gone all week and I missed a lot of these matchups, I'd get the alerts that the games were happening, but I had no signal to watch them. But surprised that, like you said, first meeting between these two teams, so like week 14, here we are, and they're finally playing each other. Should make it interesting down the stretch, but I'm just taken back a little bit by the fact that Nathan Rourke had 3 interceptions in this game, and still the BC Lions finding a way to win this game. Usually you turn over the ball that many times, that can be a death sentence, but for whatever reason, British Columbia able to keep a hot team like the Alouettes, at the back end of that scoreboard. So kudos to them, and this West Division is just becoming just such a interesting thing to keep an eye on as the season winds down. So,
yeah, 3 touchdowns or 3 interceptions is quite a bit, but not as bad as some of the other quarterbacks that we're going to be talking about. So, let's get into the next game.
Well, real quick, I mean, we forgot to mention last week how Montreal had already clinched a playoff spot. I wonder how much of that creates less of a sense of urgency, in some of these games. I was like, look, we got our spot. We can kind of play it cool. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if Montreal. Not that they'll fall off a cliff. I'm sure they'll still be competitive and will want to win games because they got to still, lock up home field and all that, which they still might. I mean, shoot, they're 10-1. They've got quite a nice lead there in their division. So we'll wait and see on that. And
Yeah.
and then second win in a row for Nathan Rourke. I mean, despite having those 3 interceptions, I think that's interesting thing to note too.
Yeah, he's finally coming into his own now. It took him a couple weeks to get readjusted to the CFL after spending the last 2 years in the NFL. But yeah, he's getting better every week, and sky's the limit for this guy, I think.
Well, he's just got to cut down on those interceptions, and I think he'll really be a problem. On Saturday night, we saw the Ottawa Redblacks defeat the Toronto Argonauts 41-27. The first score of the game came early in the first quarter, thanks to an interception return for a touchdown by Ottawa defensive back Damon Webb, giving the Redblacks a 7-0 lead. In the second quarter, Webb intercepted a tipped pass and returned it for his second defensive touchdown of the game, as well as making it a 20-3 lead. Ottawa quarterback Drew Brown then found wide receiver Andre Miller for a long touchdown catch and run, increasing the Redblacks' lead to 27-3. Ottawa added a field goal, and the score at halftime was Ottawa 31, Toronto 3. The Argos finally scored a touchdown in the third quarter when quarterback Chad Kelly connected with wide receiver Tommy Neild on a touchdown pass, but Ottawa responded with a touchdown run by running back Kalen LeBourne, making the score 38-10. In the fourth quarter, Toronto cut into the Ottawa lead when wide receiver DeMonte Coxie made a great catch and run for a touchdown. Chad Kelly scored on the 2-point conversion, and the score was then 38-21 in favor of the Redblacks. Toronto got another DeMonte Coxie touchdown late in the game with under a minute to play, but it was not enough as Ottawa got their 8th win of the season. Ottawa quarterback Drew Brown completed 30 of 40 passes for 349 yards and a touchdown. Running back Kalen LeBourne ran the ball 10 times for 47 yards and a touchdown, while wide receiver Dominic Rhymes had 10 catches for 138 yards. Kicker Lewis Ward was 4 for 4 on field goals, the longest of which was from 51 yards. On defense, defensive back Elijah McGee had 11 tackles and an interception. For the Argonauts, quarterback Chad Kelly completed 36 of 56 passes for 463 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Wide receiver David Unger had 8 catches for 131 yards. Wide receiver Makai Polk had 7 catches for 107 yards. And wide receiver DeMonte Coxie had 6 catches for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. On defense, defensive back Royce Mechie and linebacker Isaac Darkangelo both had 8 tackles. So the Redblacks remain undefeated at home and are now, 2.5 games behind Montreal in that East Division now? So things getting interesting in the East as well there at the top.
Yeah, I mean, the Redblacks are right there. Right there, the Ottawa Redblacks. They're everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, this was a pretty interesting game. You talk about in the last game, the quarterback had 3 interceptions, and this one, Chad Kelly had 4 interceptions, and we're not done yet with the interceptions going on by the losing quarterback. So we got another one to come here in just a minute. But
but still, to throw 460 whatever yards, like, goodness gracious.
56 passes, 36 of 56 passes for 463 yards. He was slinging it, and you throw it that much, you're going to get intercepted here and there because you're taking a lot of chances. But it was a fun game to watch. My Argonauts didn't win, but it was still a fun game to watch.
Yeah, and what a bounce back for the Redblacks after last week, where been claiming them. Are they the second best team? Then they dropped that game last week at the Touchdown Pacific, and now good bounce back game for them, I think. So definitely making the East at least interesting. So Montreal's not completely running away with it, but they got the Redblacks breathing down their necks.
All right. Also on Saturday, it was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers defeating the Saskatchewan Roughriders 26-21. Winnipeg opened the scoring with a Sergio Castillo field goal in the first quarter, and then added a touchdown run from backup quarterback Chris Strebler for a 10-0 lead. Late in the quarter, Saskatchewan quarterback Trevor Harris connected with Keyshawn Johnson on a touchdown pass, making the score 10-7 in favor of Winnipeg. In the third quarter, Harris found Samuel Emelis in the end zone, and Saskatchewan had their first lead of the game, 17-13. Early in the fourth quarter, quarterback Zach Collaros threw a touchdown pass to Kenny Lawler, and Winnipeg went up 23-18. In the closing moments of the game, Saskatchewan was driving down the field, but an interception by defensive back Tyrell Ford secured the win for the Blue Bombers. Winnipeg quarterback Zach Collaros completed 24 of 31 passes for 231 yards and a touchdown. Running back Brady Oliveira ran the ball 11 times for 43 yards. He also had 6 catches for 60 yards. Wide receiver Kenny Lawler had 6 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. Kicker Sergio Castillo was 4 for 4 on field goals. On defense, defensive back Michael Griffin had 6 tackles and 2 more on special teams. For Saskatchewan, quarterback Trevor Harris completed 21 of 33 passes for 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Running back Frankie Hickson ran the ball 9 times for 46 yards, and wide receiver Keon Schaefer-Baker had 6 catches for 120 yards. On defense, linebacker Jameer Thurman had 7 tackles. One of the side notes I had from this game was that the head coach of the Bombers, Mike O'Shea, picked up his club record 103rd win, passing none other than Bud Grant, who was also the head coach of Winnipeg at one time. And this happened in front of a sellout crowd of 32,343. So, the fans love their Bombers up there, and Bud Grant's got a statue in front of the stadium. He was a player up there. He was a coach up there, won some Grey Cups as a player and a coach. So, to beat him as far as having the most records in team history is a pretty big accomplishment for Mike O'Shea.
Right. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, when you've had a nice run like he had the last 4 or 5 years, with the Blue Bombers, leading them to almost 3 straight Grey Cups. I mean, that's a lot of winning. You got to do a lot of winning to get to those Grey Cups. So, I mean, he just impressive. I mean, they kind of had a down year this year, but it looks like they're finally kind of getting the ship right, and they're kind of getting ready for the playoffs now. I mean, we didn't think that about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, just kudos to his coaching and keeping that team focused, going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple other notes I've got from this game. Charles Blink Roberts, Winnipeg's all-time leading rusher, was added to the Blue Bombers' Ring of Honor during a halftime ceremony. He had 6 1,000-yard seasons when he was playing for the team, so that's pretty impressive. And this was the 20th annual Banjo Bowl, and a lot of people may not know what the Banjo Bowl is, but in a few minutes we're gonna tell you the origins of the Banjo Bowl. So hang loose for that.
To round out the Saturday tripleheader, the Edmonton Elks defeated the Calgary Stampeders 37-16. In the second quarter, Edmonton quarterback McLeod Bethel Thompson completed a long touchdown pass to Hergy Mayala. A 2-point pass play to Eugene Lewis was successful, and Edmonton took a 10-3 lead. Tevin Jones ran the ball for a touchdown on an end-around play and increased the Edmonton lead to 17-6. A pair of Boris Beatty field goals gave Edmonton a 23-6 lead at halftime. In the fourth quarter, Eugene Lewis added a touchdown catch to extend the Edmonton lead to 30-9, but Calgary defensive lineman Mike Rose intercepted a pass and returned it 83 yards for a touchdown, cutting the Edmonton lead to 30-16. Edmonton running back Justin Rankin added a touchdown run to close out the scoring, and a big win for the Elks. Edmonton quarterback McLeod Bethel Thompson completed 15 of 25 passes for 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Running back Kevin Brown ran the ball 12 times for 91 yards. Wide receiver Eugene Lewis had 6 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. And wide receiver Hergy Mayala had 2 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown. On defense, defensive back Cordell Jackson had 8 tackles. For Calgary, quarterback Logan Bonner, who started in place of Jake Mayer, completed 21 of 36 passes for 284 yards, no touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Running back Dedrick Mills ran the ball 14 times for 65 yards, and wide receiver Reggie Begelton had 8 catches for 123 yards. Kicker Rene Paredes was 3 for 3 on field goals. On defense, linebacker Brandon Dozier had 8 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. So another week, McLeod Bethel Thompson taking the starting role. I guess Trey Ford will be back next week, is from what I understand.
Well, they have a bye next week, and then he's going to be back as the starting quarterback after their bye next week. So in 2 weeks.
Okay, interesting. I mean, McLeod's looked great the last couple of games. I mean, despite that, even like early in the season, he's looked good. It's just, they weren't producing wins. But lately, I think he's been getting the job done quite well. But on the other side of the ball, the quarterback filling in for Jake Mayer there, Logan Bonner, Wolf, what
Yeah,
a rough day for him. 5 interceptions, no touchdowns. I mean, I know we all have a bad day at the office, but man, oh man, that's going to be a hard one for him to, you know, deal with.
yeah, yeah. Another note from this game: game official Larry Butler, who is 66 years old, worked his final CFL game. He's worked over 300 games as a CFL official in the last 20 years of his career. That included working 4 Grey Cup games. Butler, who lives in Edmonton, will transition into being a game day supervisor for the Elks' final 3 home games. And then he's going to become a full-time supervisor of officials next year in 2025. So good
Oh,
for
that's
him.
pretty
I,
sweet.
I think he's calling it a career before the snow starts flying, and he wants to be up in the press box where it's nice to go. And I don't blame him one bit.
Yeah,
So good for him.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, to have the next thing set up. I mean, but then to be doing what he did for as long as he did, I mean, that's
Right.
awesome. That's one of those fun stories you like to hear.
Yep. And on by this week it was the Hamilton Tiger Cats. All right, let's look at the standings after week 13. In the East Division, the Montreal Alouettes are at 10-2, and they've clinched a playoff spot. The only team to clinch a playoff spot right now. Ottawa is at 8-3-1. The Toronto Argonauts at 6-6, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats at 3-9. Over in the West Division is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the BC Lions at 7-6. Saskatchewan Roughriders at 5-7-1. The Edmonton Elks at 5-8, and the Calgary Stampeders at 4-8. Looking ahead to next week's matchups, there's only 3 games on the schedule next week. On Friday, it's going to be Toronto at BC. On Saturday, it's going to be Ottawa at Hamilton and Montreal at Calgary. So that means that Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and Edmonton are all going to be on a bye next week. All right, now the moment you've all been waiting for. You want to know what this Banjo Bowl is up there. So I'm going to let you know about the origins of this game. The annual Banjo Bowl is a charity game that began back in 2004. It is played in Winnipeg between the Blue Bombers and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The game takes place the first time the two teams face each other after Labor Day. It all started back in 2003 when Winnipeg kicker Troy Westwood referred to the people of Saskatchewan as banjo-picking inbreds. The comment was made as a joke the night before the two teams played each other in the Western Conference playoff game. Westwood grew up in Winnipeg, but his mother is from Regina in Saskatchewan. He later apologized for his remarks by saying that most people from Saskatchewan don't even know how to play a banjo. Now, this game is all done in good fun, and there is a Banjo Bowl trophy, and the losing team makes a charitable donation to the United Way in the winning team's city. So I think this is kind of cool. A lot of people dress up like hillbillies with the coveralls, and they bring a pretend banjo or a banjo that they made out of cardboard or something to the game, and everybody gets
Yeah,
into the spirit, and you know it's all going to a good cause where somebody's going to wind up making a charitable donation at the game. So it's just a lot of
yeah,
fun, and it's become a real tradition up there. And like I said, this was the 20th installment of it.
yeah. That's pretty sweet. I mean, and to have a game like that, like in college football in the states, we got all those classic traditional, like the Little Brown Jug game, like games that have been around for decades on decades. It's cool to have a modern era game like that. Like that we're in that kind of time. It's like, hey, we were around when the Banjo Bowl started. Like I think that's pretty sweet. I always like the idea that we've kind of lived in that era where the Banjo Bowl's still like relatively new.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's all the time we got for this week. Tune in again next week when Adam and I will review the week's games played in the Canadian Football League. We'll be doing this throughout the regular season and the postseason, as well as the 111th Grey Cup game played in Vancouver this November, where we will be in attendance. So remember, folks, some people may love football more than we do, but nobody, and I mean nobody, loves more football than Adam and I sitting here in Kalamazoo. Until next time, I'm Randy Snow,
And I'm Adam Snow.
and we'll see you next week somewheres around the 55-yard line.